Hello and welcome. I'm Neha Khanna and you're watching the last edition of Global Lens for the year 2023. As always, we have a packed show for you. Let's get started. The US presidential election is getting more and more chaotic by the day, and there is no end to the Republican Party frontrunner Donald Trump's troubles. After Colorado, Maine has now become the second US state to throw Trump off the ballot, plunging the 2024 election into deeper chaos and constitutional confusion over the 6th January 2021 US Capitol riot. This move worsens the growing crisis for Trump's campaign and strengthens the case for the US Supreme Court to take up the issue arising from the 14th Amendment's insurrectionist ban. It has already exacerbated the havoc already surrounding the 2024 US presidential election and could cement even wider national divides.
The U.S. state of Maine on Thursday disqualified Donald Trump from the state ballot in next year's presidential primary election, becoming the second state to issue such a ban for Trump's role in the January 6th riot on the U.S. Capitol in 2021. Thursday's decision relies on a part of the Constitution that prevents insurrectionists from holding office.
All of us here today.
Maine Secretary of State Shenna Bellows concluded that Trump incited an insurrection when he spread false claims about voter fraud in the 2020 election and then urged his supporters to march on the Capitol to stop lawmakers from certifying the vote. In a 34-page ruling, Bellows said, quote, "The U.S. Constitution does not tolerate an assault on the foundations of our government." Trump is the frontrunner for the Republican presidential nomination, and his campaign said it would quickly file an appeal to what it called an atrocious decision. The former president's lawyers argued his remarks on January 6 were protected by his right to free speech. The ruling applies only to Maine's March primary election, but it could affect Trump's status for the November general election. It also adds pressure on the U.S. Supreme Court to resolve questions about Trump's eligibility nationwide to stand in elections. Colorado's top court disqualified Trump from the state primary ballot earlier this month. Trump has vowed to challenge the decision, and the Colorado Republican Party filed its own Supreme Court appeal on Wednesday. Similar attempts to disqualify Trump in other states have been rejected. Trump has been indicted in a federal case and in Georgia for his role in trying to overturn the 2020 election, but has not been charged with insurrection related to the January 6 attack.
It's no wonder Biden and the far-left lunatics are desperate to stop us by any means necessary. They're willing to violate the U.S. Constitution at levels never seen before in order to win. They will do anything to win. They'll do whatever they have, whatever they can. And remember this, Joe Biden is a threat to democracy. He's a threat.
The attack on our nation's capital on January 6th, 2021 was an unprecedented assault on the seat of American democracy. As described in the indictment, it was fueled by lies. Lies by the defendant targeted at obstructing a bedrock function of the U.S. government, the nation's process of collecting, counting, and certifying the results of the presidential election.
And staying with news from the United States, Republican presidential hopeful Nikki Healey has attempted to clarify her comments about the Civil War a day after a voter in New Hampshire called her out for not mentioning slavery as a cause of the war. Healey told radio host Jack Heath on Monday, I mean, of course, the Civil War was about slavery, but what's the lesson in all of that? That we need to make sure that every person has freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom to do and be anything that they want to be without anyone or the government getting in the way. That was the goal of what that was at. Yes, I know it was about slavery. I'm from the South. Of course, I know it's about slavery. Her comments come amid intense backlash inside and outside the GOP after Healey told a New Hampshire town hall crowd that the Civil War was about government interfering in people's freedoms. On Wednesday, Nikki Haley had said, and I quote, "I think the cause of the Civil War was basically how the government was going to run, the freedoms and what people could and couldn't do." This comes as Haley tries to close the gap with Republican frontrunner Donald Trump ahead of next month's primary. The former South Carolina governor then asked the voter who'd asked her, about the civil war what he thought the cause was, to which the voter responded, "I'm not running for president." The voter criticized her for not mentioning slavery in her answer. He said, "In the year 2023, it is astonishing to me that you answer that question without mentioning the word slavery." Nikki Healey asked, "What do you want me to say about slavery?" And the voter replied, "You answered my question." Speaking to reporters after the town hall, the voter, who identified himself as Patrick, called his question pretty fundamental and frankly pretty easy. He said a video of Healey being asked essentially the same question when she was running for governor of South Carolina had prompted him to ask it again now that she's running for president. He said the answer that she gave then was very similar to the answer that she gave tonight. "I was just curious if she would answer it any differently." Democrats and President Joe Biden's campaign quickly seized on the moment. On social media, Biden posted it was about slavery, along with a video of the exchange. Criticism didn't just fall along party lines. A spokesperson for Florida Governor Ron DeSantis and his presidential campaign called Haley's attempts to clarify her remarks embarrassing. He said if she can't handle a question as basic as the cause of the civil war, what does she think is going to happen to her in a general election? The Democrats would eat her for lunch. Speaking at a New Hampshire town hall, former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie criticized Nikki Haley for not mentioning slavery in her initial answer. He said she did it because she's unwilling to offend anyone by telling the truth. He also repeated his criticism of Haley's previous answers on abortion and Trump. Now, as the former governor of South Carolina, the first state to secede during the Civil War, Nikki Haley has had a complicated public posture towards the Confederacy. She once defended the state's rights to secede from the United States, South Carolina's Confederate History Month, and the Confederate flag in a 2010 interview with the local activist group when she was running for governor. Healey also described the Civil War as two sides fighting for different values, one for tradition, the other for change. The 2015 shooting at a historically black church in Charleston in South Carolina spurred Healey as governor to call for the removal of the Confederate battle flag from the State House grounds, where it had been since being removed from the state's Capitol dome in 2000.
I mean, I think the cause of the Civil War was basically how government was going to run, the freedoms and what people could and couldn't do. What do you think the cause of the Civil War was?
I'm not running for president. I wanted to see your view on the cause of the Civil War.
I mean, I think it always comes down to the role of government and what the rights of the people are. And I will always stand by the fact that I think government was intended to secure the rights and freedoms of the people. It was never meant to be all things to all people. Government doesn't need to tell you how to live your life. They don't need to tell you what you can and can't do. They don't need to be a part of your life. They need to make sure that you have freedom. We need to have capitalism. We need to have economic freedom. We need to make sure that we do all things so that individuals have the liberties so that they can have freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom to do or be anything they want to be without government getting in the way.
On that note, let's slip into a quick break here on Global Lens, but don't go anywhere. We have a lot more for you on the other side.
This was intended to be a terrorist spectacular without precedent.
The plan was to bomb 2 Air India passenger aircrafts simultaneously.
There was a loud explosion and the whole plane just vanished.
Police dropped the ball, the intelligence officers dropped the ball, and the politicians dropped the ball.
It was a conspiracy that destroyed my life. It destroyed 331 lives.
News is now content. Just stream it. Download the world's first news OTT, News 9 Plus, ahead of the curve.
Welcome back. You're watching Global Lens on News 9 Live with me, Neha Khanna. Well, let's get on to our next story, which is about the Israel-Hamas war.
The following content may contain visuals that are disturbing, graphic, or sensitive in nature. Viewer discretion is advised. This material is intended for mature audiences and may not be suitable for all viewers. Please exercise caution while watching, and if you find such content distressing, we recommend discontinuing viewing. This disclaimer is provided to ensure awareness and to prioritize viewer well-being.
In the aftermath of the unprecedented October 7 attacks carried out by Hamas in southern Israel, a horrifying pattern of sexual violence against women has come to light. The New York Times conducted a 2-month investigation uncovering distressing details that indicate sexual assault and mutilation at multiple locations targeted by the terrorists. One of the victims, Gal Abdush, a mother of 2 from central Israel, disappeared from a rave party that turned into a massacre site. A viral video shot by a woman searching for her missing friend showed Gal Abdush lying on the road, partially clothed, with her face burnt beyond recognition. Israel police officials, based on video evidence, believe that Gal Abdush was raped, and her tragic story has become a symbol of the horrors inflicted on Israeli women during those attacks. The investigation identified at least 7 locations where Israeli women and girls appear to have been sexually assaulted or even mutilated. Witnesses, medical personnel, soldiers and rape counselors were among the 150 people interviewed by the New York Times, providing a comprehensive picture of the widespread gender-based violence that occurred on the 7th of October. The terror unfolded at the rave party, military bases along the Gaza border and kibbutzim. Witnesses described graphic scenes of women being raped and killed at different locations along Route 232, the highway where Gal Abdush's body was found. Volunteer medics and soldiers reported discovering more than 30 bodies of women and girls in a similar state to Gal Abdush's: legs spread, clothes torn off, and signs of abuse. The report further states the New York Times viewed disturbing photographs and videos, including one woman's corpse with nails driven into her thighs and groin. Another video provided by the Israeli military showed 2 dead soldiers at a base near Gaza who appeared to have been shot directly in their private parts. Hamas has denied accusations of sexual violence, leading to outrage amongst Israeli activists. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres and UN Women have faced criticism for not acknowledging the accusations promptly. The Israeli police, acknowledging challenges during the chaotic events of 7th October, revealed that they were not initially focused on collecting forensic evidence from women's bodies. Chaos, grief and religious duties led to hasty burials, with many bodies remaining unexamined. The lack of autopsies and crime scene examinations has left families searching for answers. The investigation faced hurdles in collecting forensic evidence, typical in cases of widespread sexual violence during conflicts. Adil Haq, a Rutgers law professor and war crimes expert, explained the challenges, saying armed conflicts prioritize safety over building criminal cases. He said armed conflict is so chaotic that very often sex crime cases will be prosecuted years later on the basis of testimony from victims and eyewitnesses. The eyewitness might not even know the name of the victim, but if they can testify, as I saw a woman being raped by this armed group, that can be enough. One key witness, named Sapir, provided graphic testimony describing brutalization of women by heavily armed gunmen that day. She recalled witnessing the rape and killing of at least 5 women, emphasizing the chaos and brutality of the attackers. Sapir's account, given to the New York Times, was supported by photographs of her hiding place and her wounds. About 15 meters from her hiding place, she said she saw motorcycles, cars and trucks pulling up. She said she saw about 100 men, most of them dressed in military fatigues and combat boots, a few in dark sweatsuits, getting in and out of the vehicles. She said the men congregated along the road and passed between them assault rifles, grenades, small missiles and badly wounded women. It was like an assembly point, she said. The first victim, she said, she saw was a young woman with copper-color hair, blood running down her back. As 2 men assaulted her, Sapir said, and every time she flinched, one of them plunged a knife into her back. She said she then watched another woman shredded into pieces. While one terrorist raped her, she said another pulled out a box cutter and sliced off her body parts. She said the men sliced her face and then the women fell out of view. Around the same time, she said she saw 3 other women raped and terrorists carrying the severed heads of 3 more women. Sapir provided photographs of her hiding place and her wounds, and police officials have stood by her testimony and released a video of her with her face blurred, recounting some of what she saw. Other witnesses like Raz Cohen, according to this New York Times report, a young Israeli who had also attended the rave party and said that he was hiding in a dried up stream bed. Maybe 40 yards in front of him, he recalled, a white van pulled up and its doors flew open. He said he then saw 5 men wearing civilian clothes, all carrying knives and one carrying a hammer, dragging a woman across the ground. She was young, naked and screaming as the men around her brutally raped her. He said, "I still remember her voice, screams without words." Then one of them raised a knife and they just slaughtered her. Another account cited by the NYT report was of Shoaim Quetta, who also recounted horrifying scenes of women being raped and slaughtered. Volunteer emergency medical technicians described discovering bodies with signs of sexual assault at the rave site and in kibbutzim, regretting their inability to document more due to religious rules and the need for respect for the dead. Despite the challenges, the Israeli police continue to uncover evidence of sexual violence. The Deputy Superintendent, Moshe Finzi, highlighted the recovery of videos showing women being brutalized, emphasizing the dual forces of anti-Semitism and misogyny at play. The lack of autopsies and the quick burial of bodies have left potential evidence buried. Some survivors of sexual assault have been identified, but their trauma has made it difficult for them to speak publicly. The Association of Rape Crisis Centers in Israel has stressed the importance of understanding the broader narrative through the victims' stories. These are the horrific details that have been highlighted by this New York Times investigation. And staying with news about the Israel-Hamas war, as the war rages on for the 12th week, there are many who believe the war aims of the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Gaza's Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar look unattainable in 2024, and their fight may consign the Palestinian territory to yet more devastation and an open-ended Israeli occupation. Netanyahu seeks to obliterate Hamas for its attack on the 7th of October, Israel's bloodiest day ever, seemingly willing to raze much of Gaza to the ground and risk reimposing a military occupation on the enclave, which Israel had actually left in 2005. Yahya Sinwar hopes to trade remaining hostages that Hamas and allied groups seized on the 7th of October for thousands of Palestinian prisoners, end the Israeli-Egyptian blockade of Gaza and put Palestinian statehood back in play. Some Palestinians initially felt pride that Hamas fighters had shattered Israel's image of invincibility, but soon realized the attack would draw a terrifying response. Weeks of bombardment have left much of the Hamas-ruled Strip in ruins, killing more than 21,000 people and wounding 55,000, according to Palestinian health authorities, and displacing 1.9 million, according to relief agencies and Gaza health officials. Hamas and its thousands of fighters are dug deep into the territory's dense cities and refugee camps, and there is little sign that they are close to defeat, with battles continuing across the enclave and their leaders still at large. The Israeli military has expressed regret for civilian deaths, but blames Hamas for operating in densely populated areas or using civilians as human shields, a charge Hamas denies. Israel's army chief has predicted the war will last for several months. Even if the war ends early next year, Israel will likely maintain a military occupation, drawing frowns from allies as Palestinians suffer in 10 cities squeezed against the enclave's border with Egypt. Netanyahu has yet to articulate a plan for post-war Gaza, but his government has told several Arab states it wants to carve out a buffer zone to prevent a repeat of the 7th October attack, in which Israel says Hamas killed 1,200 of its people. No Palestinian authority acceptable to Israel appears able to take over soon, nor will Hamas readily cede control. Most Arab states are unwilling to get involved. That leaves Israeli occupation, an ongoing siege, and no real reconstruction. Netanyahu and Israel face risks with troops deployed in a dangerous urban war zone and world opinion turning against them fast. But the risks for Sinwar may be greater still. If Yahya Sinwar, the Hamas leader, survives the onslaught, he will be left with an enclave in ruins, a battered or weakened military base, and a local population enduring hunger and homelessness. Jews are Hilterman, Middle East and North Africa Program Director of the International Crisis Group, said, "I don't think there is much appetite for anyone to be standing in and occupying Gaza instead of the Israelis. So the realistic way forward, which I'm not advocating at all, is Israeli reoccupation. It's very difficult to see how Israel could withdraw from Gaza," he said. The Israeli vision for post-war Gaza, so far most politicians and analysts say, is to emulate the occupied West Bank model by having some designated authority running civic affairs while Israel maintains security control. The West Bank-based Palestinian Authority, which Hamas ousted from Gaza in 2007, when it took over control, is unacceptable to Israel despite the insistence of its ally, the United States. Israel would instead prefer a multinational authority including Arab allies, incorporating a Palestinian council and technocrats. Mevran al-Murashar, Jordan's former foreign minister, now vice president for studies at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace in Washington, says no one, that is the Arab states, want to take control of Gaza. Israel will deal with Gaza like the West Bank once the war is over. Israeli forces will go in and out as they wish. This could mean the United Nations and humanitarian agencies providing services inside Gaza until Washington persuades Israel to accept a revitalized Palestinian Authority to govern the territory or agree to some other arrangement. Ghassan al-Khatib, a Palestinian analyst, said, "I don't believe Israel would militarily leave Gaza. It would retain the security responsibility that will allow its forces to enter, attack, raid and arrest when they want and as they want. They don't want to leave militarily from Gaza because Hamas will regroup. It'll be a matter of time. 1 year, 2 or 3, and things will go back to where they were." Netanyahu has said Israel will keep some form of security control throughout Gaza indefinitely, though he insists that this would not amount to reoccupying the Gaza Strip. Calling the war an existential test for Israel, he has repeatedly said the war will end only once Hamas's leaders and its military capabilities are completely rooted out. A senior Israeli official said in a briefing this month that Israel would not want for Hamas or the Palestinian Authority to control Gaza after the fighting is over, nor would it want to run the lives of 2.3 million Palestinians in Gaza itself. On the contrary, we want to see local administration headed by Palestinian leadership that's able to work for the future and horizon of the Palestinian people with the help of moderate Arab countries and the whole world, they say. Analysts say eradicating Hamas will likely result in thousands of civilian deaths more, the decimation of what remains of Gaza, further displacement of hundreds of thousands of Gazans, and perhaps a mass exodus to Egypt despite Cairo's objections. Israel's insistence on eliminating Hamas may be undergoing a reassessment or shift in strategy. Longer term, 2 regional sources say Israel could attempt more focused raids on Hamas leaders or fighters. But eliminating leading commanders would not be enough for Israel to claim it has destroyed the group, declare victory or end the war. Most Hamas leaders already are successors to ones previously assassinated by Israel. Killing the leadership doesn't impact a movement that has a full organizational hierarchy and grassroots. If they kill one, another will take over. That's what Khatib said. Most analysts argue it will be nearly impossible to eradicate the Hamas ideology, with recent polls showing a rise in its popularity in Gaza. The war has brought a wider deployment of US military forces in the region, including the presence of aircraft carriers. The longer it lasts and the more destruction, the greater the risk of regional escalation. Fears of spillover are high, even if Iran and its militia proxies in Lebanon, Iraq and Yemen have largely kept their support for Hamas to waging low-intensity attacks against Israel and its ally, the US. Iranian-aligned Houthi forces have attacked ships in the Red Sea, disrupting global trade routes. The group has vowed to strike US warships if its forces are hit by Washington, which has set up a coalition force to counter Houthi attacks. The most dangerous flashpoint is the Israel-Lebanon border, where Iran-backed Hezbollah and Israel have exchanged missile fire and attacks since the 7th of October. Although Israel has focused on the war in Gaza, it's also determined to push Hezbollah from its northern border and get tens of thousands of Israelis back to homes evacuated because of the Lebanese group's rocket fire. There is no sign now that the war will usher in a revival of stalled peace moves and bring about a two-state solution, as Washington hopes. The 7th October attack, along with accounts of Hamas atrocities, rapes and executions, has left Israel shaken to the core, deeply affecting any hope for peace or coexistence even amongst moderates in that country. In the West Bank, a rising number of Israel army raids, renewed settler violence, confiscation of Palestinian land and detention of activists and fighters are closing the window for any settlement, according to analysts. They say the idea promoted by the West that eliminating Hamas will eventually allow the Palestinian Authority's return to Gaza and a new push for a Palestinian state is an illusion. I believe this war will have an extreme reaction and impact on the Israeli society. Israel as a society and as a political elite will become more radical, said Khatib, a professor of politics at Bezait University in the West Bank. He says there is no political horizon. Whatever was left has evaporated. And US President Joe Biden had hoped to present a firm international response to Yemen's Houthi attacks on Red Sea shipping by launching a new maritime force. But a week after its launch, many do not wish to be associated with it publicly or at all, largely because of widespread public anger over Israel's war on Gaza. Here's a report.
We've launched Operation Prosperity Guardian.
The United States announced the launch of a new international maritime force in response to Yemen's Houthi attacks on Red Sea shipping. But just over a week after the launch, many US allies don't want to be associated with it publicly or at all. The Pentagon says 20 countries have signed up for the defensive coalition Operation Prosperity Guardian. It aims to ensure billions of dollars worth of commerce can flow freely through a vital shipping choke point in the Red Sea. As the Houthis try to inflict an international cost over Israel's campaign in Gaza. But nearly half of those countries have so far not come forward to acknowledge the contributions or allowed the US to do so. The Iran-backed Houthis have attacked or seized a dozen ships with missiles and drones since November 19th. The EU has signalled its support of the Maritime Task Force with a joint statement condemning the Houthi attacks. Italy and Spain issued statements appearing to distance themselves from the maritime force. Saudi Arabia and the UAE have proclaimed no interest in the venture. The reluctance is partly explained by public anger over Israel's Gaza offensive, launched after the October 7th rampage in southern Israel by Hamas militants that killed 1,200 people. There is also the risk that participating countries become subject to Houthi retaliation. That appears to be the case for India, which is unlikely to join the US operation, according to a senior Indian military official. Many European and Gulf countries already participate in one of several US-led military groups in the Middle East. Some countries not formally joining the Red Sea Maritime Task Force could still coordinate patrols with the US Navy.
Time for us to slip into another quick break here on Global Lens, but there's plenty more on the other side, including the latest on the Pakistan elections that are around the corner.
Since the last 2 years, Khalistani terror groups are threatening Indian diplomats in Canada, US, UK and Australia. Investigations of these threats led us to the first ever abduction and killing of an Indian diplomat, Ravindra Matre, in UK's Birmingham in 1984. Our months-long investigation finally led us to the murderer of Ravindra Matre, who has been hiding in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir for the last 40 years. Watch our exclusive documentary, Murder of an Indian Diplomat, where we reveal the man who killed Ravindra Matre.
Stop searching, start streaming. Download the world's first news OTT, News 9 Plus, ahead of the curve.
Bangalore traffic is an example of something that has gone wrong with our system.
We have more than 50 flyovers in Bangalore city. If flyover is a solution to traffic problem, Bangalore should not have traffic problem.
According to TomTom Traffic Index 2022, Bangalore is ranked as the second worst city in the world when it comes to traffic.
The speed limit at the ORR is 80 kilometers per hour, but our vehicle has only moved 10 kilometers per hour.
What Bangalore needs is a surgery, but what we have been offered repeatedly are band-aids.
Only on the world's first news OTT. News 9 Plus. Ahead of the curve.
Currently, the industry is facing a lot of challenges as far as demand is concerned. Basically, the US markets has slowed down because of high inflation.
So obviously, diamonds being a dream product, something which doesn't have a utility value or is seen as a luxury. So that obviously goes off your shopping list. That's the first item that will go off your shopping list, especially in recessionary trends.
That lab-grown diamonds are not mined, and they do away with the entire mining. So they save up on all the environmental damage that is associated with mining, and of course, the mining cost, which is why they're even more affordable.
People that is impacted by all these recessions are the artisans, are the people who work in this industry, right? But I think lab-grown diamond has allowed them to actually use their skills in the same product.
This and more streaming on world's first news OTT, News 9 Plus. Download now.
Welcome back. You're watching Global Lens on News 9 Live with me, Neha Khanna. Let's now turn our attention to our neighborhood and get you the latest news stories from Pakistan. Now, India has sent a request to Pakistan to extradite 26/11 Mumbai terror attack mastermind Hafeez Saeed to India. That's what Foreign Ministry spokesperson Arindam Bagchi told reporters today. 71-year-old Hafeez Saeed was sentenced to 33 years in jail by a Pakistani court after being convicted in 2 cases of terror financing in April 2022. The case was filed by Pakistan's counter-terrorism department. Hafeez, however, has continued to evade punishment for involvement in the 26/11 terror strikes. He's been sentenced in multiple cases of terror financing in the past. In 2020, he was sentenced to 15 years in jail. He has spent years in and out of detention in varying forms, sometimes under house arrest. But he had earlier roamed freely across Pakistan and addressed many incendiary speeches targeting India with impunity. India's extradition request also comes at a time when a political front backed by the 26/11 Mumbai attacks mastermind will fight the upcoming Pakistan election on the 8th of February. Hafeez Saeed's son and terror group Lashkar-e-Taiba leader Hafeez Talha Saeed is one of the candidates in this election. Hafeez Talha Saeed is considered the number 2 man in the Lashkar-e-Taiba, second only to his father. Last year, India's Home Ministry had declared him a designated terrorist under the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. For years, the United States has offered $10 million as a reward for anyone that could lead to the arrest of Hafeez Saeed. He had been moving around freely in Pakistan as the head of the Jamaat-ud-Dawa, which presents itself as a charitable organization, but is nothing but a front for the Lashkar-e-Taiba.
As you're aware, the person in question is wanted in numerous cases in India. He is also a UN proscribed terrorist. In this regard, we have conveyed a request along with relevant supporting documents to the government of India to extradite him, government of Pakistan, to extradite him to India to face trial in a particular case. I think that is what you were referring to. So yes, we have of course been flagging the issue of activities that he's been wanted for. In this case, you specifically mentioned whether we wanted to extradite him. Yes, there has been a request sent to face trial in a particular case.
All right, let's now get you a lowdown on the upcoming Pakistan general elections slated to be held on the 8th of February, I beg your pardon, and the return of Nawaz Sharif. Former Pakistan Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif's candidature for the upcoming elections in February 2024 has been accepted by Pakistan's Election Commission following the reversal of 2 graft convictions. His nomination for the NA 130 constituency stands confirmed for the general election slated to be held on the 8th of February. However, Sharif still faces a life ban on holding public life, a hurdle that remains unresolved despite his nomination acceptance. A hearing regarding this ban is scheduled to be held in the month of January, despite previous convictions being overturned on appeal, paving the way for his eligibility in the parliamentary elections. His qualification to stand remains under question. The parliamentary elections on 8th February will play a pivotal role in determining the country's new Prime Minister through a parliamentary vote. Let's now turn our attention to the Russia-Ukraine war that has gone on for 22 long months now. Ukrainian children living near the front lines have been attending virtual school amid the country's war with Russia. The children yearn to go back to school, where they can see their teachers and play outside with their peers during recess, but the constant threat of war has put a halt on their childhood. In some parts of Ukraine, officials have begun building heavily fortified underground schools to allow children to return safely to in-person studies.
If anyone needs to go to the bomb shelter, go ahead. If someone has an air raid alert, leave the class and go to the shelter. If everything is fine, let's continue.
Irina Gerasimova's schooling is punctuated with warnings like these, delivered by her teacher virtually. Fighting rages just 25 miles away from her home in Slovyansk, a city in the eastern Donetsk region, which is under regular threat of Russian airstrikes. The 8-year-old's education was first forced online by the COVID-19 pandemic, then again by Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine almost 2 years ago. Her mother Irina says she hasn't attended school since the first grade.
She used to take judo classes. She was an active child. Now I look at her and she has changed so much. She doesn't want to do anything. She doesn't have friends. Her spirits are low. She knows it's a long time before she can come back to school, to judo. She has changed. Mentally, it's hard for her.
Now a third grader, Irina says she would like to make friends, see her teacher and play outside during recess. She never meets her classmates and knows them only from their thumbnail images online. But the hope of returning seems a distant dream. Local school director Anatoly Pogyarelov said classes in frontline areas like Slovyansk would remain remote unless better bomb shelters were built, or until the war ended.
Remote education is the only way for now. Maybe when Ukraine will win back most of all of its territory, we could consider mixed or offline studies. The possibility of studying where there is an equipped bomb shelter. Currently, we do not have this option, alas.
However, in the northeastern Kharkiv region, which borders Russia, officials have begun building heavily fortified underground schools to allow children to return safely to in-person studies.
News from Russia now. A raunchy celebrity-studded party in Moscow has prompted outrage amongst Russian politicians and law enforcement agencies in one of the starkest examples to date of how Vladimir Putin is moving the country in a conservative and anti-liberal direction. The party that took place on the 20th of December was a dress-up ball held at a Moscow nightclub with the theme Almost Naked and was organized by the popular Instagram influencer Anastasia Ivleva and attended by a number of household celebrity names who have stayed in the country since Putin launched his invasion of Ukraine in February 2022. The scantily clad stars wore flesh-colored mesh, lace and lingerie, with one rapper attending in nothing but a sock in what appeared to be a tribute to the famous 1987 Red Hot Chili Peppers album cover. Footage of the party quickly spread across Russian social media, causing outrage amongst pro-war commentators and nationalist officials. One prominent television propagandist said there is a war going on in the country, but these beasts, scum, are organizing this. These brutes don't care what's going on. 2 days after the party, a rapper who wore the sock outfit was summoned to court. He was sentenced to 15 days under the charges of the notorious gay propaganda law. Since then, many of the celebrities who attended the party have had their concerts cancelled and advertising contracts terminated in what Russians have dubbed the biggest cancelling of stars since the start of the war. Sensing that their careers and even freedoms were under threat, the celebrities have embarked on a series of public apologies. The party organizer is now facing jail time. The authorities have launched an inspection into tax evasion against the influencers, while more than 20 people have signed a class action lawsuit demanding that the organizer pay 8.5 million euros to a pro-war charity. The scandal is part of a growing movement that the Kremlin has launched in its efforts to promote so-called traditional values, with Putin introducing a series of repressive anti-liberal laws aimed at stoking his nationalistic agenda. All right, news from China now. Holiday travelers in China are preparing for potential transport challenges as the Weather Bureau issued a warning earlier today of prolonged heavy fog and haze. The affected areas range from Hebei province in the north to southern Shanghai, with conditions expected to persist for at least another 24 hours.
Some of Shanghai's best-known landmarks disappeared behind a haze of fog on Friday, leaving Chinese year-end holidaymakers bracing for possible transport disruptions. The Weather Bureau warned that the heavy fog would shroud areas from Hebei province in the north to Shanghai in the south for more than 24 hours. The Central Meteorological Observatory issued its first red warning for fog since 2017. Shanghai residents were unaccustomed to seeing their city like this.
It's definitely different. In this hazy weather, I can no longer see the Shanghai Center Tower, which is the tallest building in Shanghai. As I look from the Puxi to Pudong side, the Oriental Pearl Tower is also faintly visible.
Some of the city's ferry routes were temporarily suspended. Some sections of highways and a bridge to a container port were temporarily closed. Dense fog was predicted in parts of Hebei, Shandong, Anhui, Jiangsu and Shanghai, leading to low visibility of less than 50 meters in some areas. More than 600 flights were delayed in various cities, tracking app Flightmaster showed. The severe weather was due to high humidity and poor atmospheric diffusion conditions, forecasters said. Conditions were expected to improve from Saturday evening, with a cold wave of air expected to blow over the country. China has experienced a year of climate extremes. Last week, most of the country was hit by a cold snap that rewrote records with sub-freezing temperatures. In the summer, scorching heat reached 125 degrees Fahrenheit in the northwest. Summer storms also brought record rainfall to Beijing and flooding elsewhere.
News from South Korea now. The head of the district police force that investigated South Korean actor and Parasite star Lee Sun-kyun over allegations of illegal drug use has defended the tough questioning of the actor before he was found dead. Incheon Metropolitan Police Chief Kim Hwee-jung told a news briefing that the entire process was justified and done with Lee's consent. He expressed deep regret over the actor's death and offered condolences to his family. 48-year-old Lee, who played the wealthy patriarch in the Oscar-winning film Parasite, died on Wednesday. His death brought an outpouring of sympathy from the film industry and the public alike, as well as questions over the apparently harsh and public nature of the probe that fueled media coverage, delving into Lee's private life. Kim said the questioning over Lee's 3 appearances, including a final one that went on all night, was necessary to hear his side and was done in the presence of his lawyer. Lee had denied that he knowingly took illegal drugs and said he was tricked into doing so by a bar hostess who was trying to blackmail him. He made 3 highly public appearances before the police since October, the last time for 19 hours overnight, leaving the police station on Christmas Eve. He was found dead in a car at a park in Seoul after being reported missing. Former South Korean President Moon Jae-in, who was a human rights lawyer before entering politics, was among those who criticized the police practice in sensational media reporting of the case. Incheon police had earlier questioned K-pop star G-Dragon over suspicion of illegal drug use, but dropped the case without charging him. The probe comes as part of a crackdown by the government of the conservative president Yoon Suk-yeol, who called it a war on drugs. There has been a string of high-profile arrests, including business conglomerate heirs and celebrities, under South Korea's tough drug laws, which punishes those found guilty of abusing drugs as well as drug dealing by up to 14 years in prison.
The head of the district police force that investigated South Korean actor Lee Sun-kyun over allegations of illegal drug use before his death defended the tough questioning of the late Parasite star at a news briefing Thursday. Incheon Metropolitan Police Chief Kim Hwee-jung said the entire process was justified and done with Lee's consent.
고인에 대한 수사는
The investigation of the deceased was conducted based on specific reports, testimony, and evidence, and under legally prescribed procedures.
Lee made 3 highly public appearances before police since October, the last time for 19 hours overnight, leaving the police station on Christmas Eve. According to local news media reports before his death, Lee had denied he knowingly took illegal drugs and said he was tricked into doing so by a bar hostess who was trying to blackmail him. The 48-year-old, who was found dead in a car at a park in Seoul Wednesday after being reported missing, brought an outpouring of sympathy from the film industry and the public alike, as well as questions over the apparently harsh and public nature of the probe that fueled media coverage delving into his private life. His film industry colleagues visited the memorial set up at Lee's wake. The police probe comes as a part of a crackdown by the government of conservative President Yoon Suk-yeol, who called it a, quote, war on drugs.
With that, it's a wrap on the show, the last edition of Global Lens for the year 2023. And as we wrap up, here's wishing all of you a very happy new year. See you in 2024. Ram's Ayodhya rebuild. Ahead of Pran Pratishtha. Prime Minister Modi in Ayodhya. Watch our rolling coverage on Saturday on News 9 Live.
Seeing is believing. Or is it? You know it's true when you hear it yourself. Am I right? Or wrong? These are your favorite celebrities that you saw in the videos. But what if I told you that they are not? Welcome to the world of deepfakes. These celebrities were caught in the web of deepfakes. So what if I told you that you could be next? AI has entered our lives and it's here to stay. But what's more scary is how artificial intelligence is being misused to impersonate or create videos with people who have nothing to do with it. The biggest casualties are the celebrities with star power. People like Kajol, Alia Bhatt, Katrina Kaif, Rashmika Mandanna. So basically the queen bees of Bollywood have been targeted. So what makes you think that you are safe?
Today, deepfake is one of the biggest challenges that the digital ecosystem is facing, and particularly in the Indian context. Now, some major celebrities and actresses have been targeted, including Alia Bhatt, including Katrina Kaif, Rashmika Mandanna. But they are not going to be alone. Everybody is going to be targeted.
It needn't be that you need to have the exact pictures. They can make progressions on your face, right? They can age you. They can change your structure or your face in such a way that it will look like this is you in 10 years or so. And if that can happen, imagine what they can do with your pictures that are available right now and morph it into a very walking, talking image of you doing or saying something completely different than what you've not been a part of at all.